coming under the category of fiat is not being accepted in trade around the world. So now it's becoming what you call domestically accepted and rejected outside. So now you have hyperinflation, which is what? Corporate state robbery of the people, which is what's going on now, and it's accelerating. So therefore, all of us should be about the business of restoring our right of estate, shouldn't we? That's where our efforts should be. It doesn't mean, because you're being realistic and practical, that many things we're doing now while we're in this process of transition is a compromise. Don't call it other than compromise. Don't imply it as other than compromise. But that compromission should be with the intention of correcting it for the next generation, if not for yourselves, which is what we've been saying for years.
This is, I don't know about this question, but I won't put it up there because they didn't put it down here like 6 or 7 times. So I'm going to, Islam, can a nationalized father whose child's mother is Black and civil litter mortuus arrange for a de jure Moorish adoption with a competent nationalized willing quote unquote mother to have the child nationalized?
Well, see, because this is what must be comprehensive. Let's say this from the beginning. This is for everyone in general. The nationality is a birthright.
And
process is only a formal activity to give public notice.
The child is
the consciousness itself and beginning to act on it is national. See, the deal of it is what you have is simply human beings being misclassified for the purpose of presenting them as stock and as surety for a private trading company known as the United States via its subsidiaries. Nationalization is a divine right that already exists but has been interrupted under escheat operations. So therefore, the first principle of nationality or nationalization is consciousness. All other activities is just a formality to let the world know. See, so the honor of your mothers and fathers is divine. It's in the blood. The process is only because of what you would call the necessity of countering assumed claims that are already out there under the straw. And this is back to assumed jurisdiction that we're talking about. Whether you're talking about the birth certificates, the marriage certificate, or other instrumentalities that the corporate operatives of the corporate state are claiming to own your rights or your body or your estate or your liberties, and thus they are FOFR, and that all entries into the Sister QV trust must be made through them, as the being is held as a ward or state ward and incompetent, also known as a minority. You know, so when one understands what these grammars mean, you consciously counter them.
So here's a question again. I'm thinking from the same person who asked about the pension.
The pensions are gone. Let's
right, but as it is though, if they're still going to give them something saying the pension and Social Security benefits, what documents are needed, and who will I submit it to? Isn't that old business?
That's old business.
And
take
you
care of it.
In your
take care of that business because it's a corporate entity.
In your straw.
They already have that.
So just don't fool with that.
And it's not your straw. That is
I said in the straw that they create.
Remember, the Sister QV Trust is what they're operating on. They're operating on via contract. The deal of this, in fact, the pensions are gone. This is again why they're doing the stimulus, to cover up the fact so that the public don't come after their necks. And I don't mean next, N-E-X-T. I mean N-E-C-K-S.
Next.
Because the last large financial operations of the United States corporation company that they had control of is the Federal Employees Retirement Pension Fund. That's gone. So if you're talking about thinking long term with the so-called pension, don't hold your breath. So we all need to be about the business of restoring the estates. All of us. Reversion of estate is part of nationalization. And when you nationalize, that's already implied politically. They know it, even though people who nationalize don't know it. This is another reason why you see so many people talking against it, who really know the effect that it has. You know, someone who knows the effect of it are very sensitive. That's why they are, because it's killing the stock market. And the masses don't know that it's tied directly to the stock market. They think that the products that are produced, the cars and everything like that, are really what affect the stock market. No, they're reflections. The trade of material goods is a reflection of the bonds that back all of that trade up, which are marriage certificates, birth certificates, etc. Human trafficking.
But what is their expectation, has been their expectation all along, or what have they received and gained as a result of using birth certificates and marriage? No, what have they how have they gained materially based on putting us under their, you know?
This is what has gained. Remember, the fiat categorized instruments, which is not limited to federal private commercial paper. That's the lawful term for what you call Federal Reserve notes, debt notes, etc. It's the marriage certificates and all the other instrumentalities. It has allowed them to steal people's estate and labor under the guise of paying them when they've never paid them. But because the people believed they were getting paid, the value is psychological. It is based on trust and blind faith. And that's all. Once that leaves, it dies. However, in the process, it has allowed them to escheat your estates. As an example, and this is fact. This is fact. This is fact. The Federal Reserve Board, who are members of the Roman Curia, who are answerable to the Board of Trustees, known as the Congress and the Senate for the United States Corporation Company, to the Circle Church and Chancery members, that would be the lawyers, attorneys, and esquire, who are answerable to the Queen of England and the Lords of London, etc., which will include many of those members, who are answerable to the Pope, who controls the global world trust, which is peopled with what is known as Sister QV trust, that are instrumentalities that represent the owned souls of every human being on earth, claimed by the Pope of Rome under the Spanish Inquisition. So what it is they have been stealing the resources of the world by simply printing private owned vouchers known as Federal Reserve notes that go into the reserve of other nation states that buy U.S. Treasury bonds. So they've been getting all material goods for absolutely nothing and making you work for it, and then lighting cigars with $100 bills, and you're thinking they're rich. No, that's candy wrapper paper for them, but it's money for you only. Then they go with suitcases to different districts. As an example, Wilmington, Delaware, as an example. They will go to someone like Senator J.B. years ago and put a briefcase full of Federal Reserve notes. He will designate through Chase Bank or some other area, and they will go in targeted neighborhoods and buy up property for nothing. What they bought is the labor and the estates of people for generations. That's the benefit. They've been getting something for nothing. They've been stealing or cheating people's estates with Federal Reserve notes, which are nothing more than printed trash coming from the dump. with ink on it that has no backing whatsoever, but has the full faith and trust of an ignorant people who don't know that they're under occupation and they have lost their estates for generations under its teeth. And they're sitting around talking about whether there's gold or silver and don't even understand. That's part of the argument, but it isn't the issue, never was. They're still under the illusion that these people are their government. They're still under the illusion that the United States is the country. They're still under the illusion that the agent members of the different agencies have authority to tell them to do this, that, or the other, including take a jab in their arm. And they've been cooperating, giving up their estate, and that's called abandonment of estate, and it's also called consent. And that's what's been going on. We're trying to get them to start using their intelligence and recognize that the hybrid Satanists have no power except what we keep giving them. And this is what happens when you have conscious people over the years who have been trying to help the people. They would murder them to coerce the rest of the people to keep consenting to what is a known fraud. And then they keep saying, they made me do this, they made me do that. Well, that's a yes and a no at the same time. We keep consenting. And then we keep following what you call people of color, which are usually called black Negro leaders, who keep telling these people, well, you can't eat the sandwich unless you consent. They're encouraging the ignorance without explanation, sending it to the next generation. This is what has happened. And so until the people stop serving Rome or giving Rome authority that they do not have, that they never had, it's a matter of trust. It's not a matter of authority. It's a matter of trust law. And soon as you apply to them, you have applied or said they are your or they are your fofer. Now, this is back to the grammar.
What's a fofer?
A fofer is a feudal word for a trustee. And that's what they've been operating on. Or they've been calling them white man, which also means fofer, trustee, and ruler of the land. It does not mean complexion. Then they've been exercising that authority that we keep giving them. Then we want to march around the place and complain because we don't know what the hell we're talking about. And we keep following compromised so-called black people who are compromised and don't want to fight back, which is why they keep capitulating, which trains the next generation rather than put up a fight, except when they're out of a job and Rome wants to send them to some other African country or island to fight against their own people, to steal from them like they've been robbed. This is what's been going on. And they don't want to take the responsibility or the charge that this man has power, because we have a bunch of compromised people who won't admit that they're compromised, who keep empowering the hybrid Europeans, and he keeps exercising that power as the white sovereign man of earth, which is what that means. Does not mean Caucasian race, does not mean pale people. It means sovereign. Now that's the fact. And so we're trying to inform our people and encourage them to start taking responsibility to make public reversion of estate, to kill the bond instruments, which is the source of their power. Keep in mind, the fiat has the power of trade because the people keep believing in it. However, it is apparent that the movement that's happening at Midgard is that the world are rejecting them. And the deal of this is that they're taking that private commercial paper of the treasury of the U.S. Treasury bonds out of their reserve, aren't they?
Yeah, they are.
And so the nations of the world are doing what we should have been doing.
Yes, they are.
And so since we wouldn't claim the births, a few have, we've also been encouraging other people around the world. They're watching us while we speak. And they know that there's a bunch of compromised people among us. They know that. However, the world is moving on it now. And so it doesn't matter with the compromised people that we have among us. It's only a matter of time that what? The whole system of the straw and non-Begeer is collapsing. And so the people can act if they want to, or they can choose not to. However, the less knowledge they have and the less propensity and activity that we have consciously among themselves, the less probable that they may survive this thing. And that's the reality. That's not an opinion, that's a reality. That's a mathematical reality. And so there's going to be a lot of sickness and death because the people keep on what? Capitulating. It's called consent.
Is there any more questions, comments, questions? Let me see. Okay, here's a question. Can we not own our own straw man since the government owes the people a benefit because it is insolvency?
See, the deal of it is they're insolvent, so what can they give you? That's number one. You're answering your own question on multiple levels. What we can do is claim our estate. See, this is what's really been happening. Keep in mind all the wealth that has been robbed of the Moors since, particularly accelerating after they kidnapped the last African pope of the original popes. We're not talking about the hybrids thereafter, during the Napoleonic Wars, etc., and been stealing the estates of the world. Keep in mind that a lot of the gold, much more than people ever imagined, has been stored in tunnels beneath the Vatican and other places. There's more than enough wealth for every man, woman, and child on the earth. There's a mental dependency that our people have in Roman operatives, which is why the compromised people among us still call them sovereign. They will not call them hybrid Europeans. They'll call them white man. They keep giving him power. However, the rest of the world is rejecting them, and their platforms are being dismantled by necessity because the nations of the earth have been injured. And while many of the Moors here in North America are active, you have a lot of them who are compromised and who insist on maintaining that compromised position. However, the world is moving out and around them, and it doesn't matter their compromission because they're going to be what you would call inflated out of their possessions while they're taking their passive position. They're going to be inflated out of all their possessions. However, before all that takes place, things are going to collapse. And then by default, a few, even some of the hybrid Europeans, will be trying to help restore the estates, reversion of estate of the people, with the general mission of actually even saving themselves. Meaning that to save themselves, they're going to have to start telling the truth. And the poverty, remember this, the poverty exists that everybody fears is absolutely artificial. See, people still are fearing how we're going to eat tomorrow type thing. You know, because there's that psychology that, quote unquote, the people who have been operating is their government, and they're in a dependency mind by both their so-called educational tools, etc. And so they're in a subordinated mind. And so this is why you only have a handful of men and women that ever have the courage to actually fight back to Rome. However, all it takes is a small percentage to start maintaining the truth and keep pushing the truth. And the systems, by virtue of nature, will start collapsing because then Mother Nature steps in. Or what you would call the divine source, or all universal law, by whatever name you want to call the divine source. See, until we collectively start rejecting Rome rules. And this is back to where Dr. Naila, I've always said over the years, our people always claim they love Jesus, God, Allah, Yahweh, all this stuff. No, they don't. Rome is their God. They won't buy or sell without a license from him.
Yeah.
And whenever they talk about exercising right, the first thing comes in their mind, he won't let me move unless I pay him. He won't let me have my children unless I pay him. He won't let me cut hair unless I pay him. He won't let me braid my daughter's hair unless I pay him. He won't let me go across the street unless I pay him. That's their mentality. See, remember, most of that is mental. It's not real. But it's become our reality. It's called black culture, or quote unquote dead culture. And we have what? Cultivated it among ourselves. Our problem is that we're trying to get those who have courage or guts, and it's only a handful among us, to go with the rest of the civilized world and start rejecting Rome and stop trying to serve two masters. That's all it is. It really boils down to simply that. Because he has no power except what we keep giving him. In a political term, it's called they have no jurisdiction except that we give it to them. What is jurisdiction? The power to act, the power to do, authorized by consent of the governed.
We have two questions. Let me see. Here's one. Atlantic Islands address. Oh, it's the same one from Rico Vasquez. If I am Aboriginal from the Atlantic Islands, Bahamas, and would like to nationalize, how can I nationalize if I'm under a different constitution?
The principles of a constitution actually are universal. The principles, keep that in mind. The written instrumentality may be distinct to different political jurisdictions, but the principles behind that are ancient. And your different and keep in mind all of the Bahamas, or what you call any of the aggregate land from Chile to America, what is known as Americana, which is all of the islands of America. All of that is the Moorish Empire. To North America, to Greenland, all of it is. So all you have to do is start making your claim. See, the deal of it is,
I guess when they do the same paperwork, or
the principle can be the same. See, the nature. This is back to reversionary principle. They must know the absence of it has been one source. The operators and owners of foreign Europeans governing the territories known as the U.S. Corporation and Canada. Those are the culprits.